session on the Right Energy Partnership with Indigenous Peoples. I am Joan Carling, Kankanaay from the Philippines, and working as the co-convenor of the Indigenous Peoples Major Group for Sustainable Development, which is taking this initiative. Before we start with our panel of speakers, I would just like to acknowledge that the Rainforest Action Network and Amazon Watch are co-hosting this event, and they will give their few remarks at the end of the session. So just to start, this initiative, the Right Energy Partnership with Indigenous Peoples, was a result of a research and consultation done by the IPMG, the Indigenous Peoples Major Group, because we've heard a lot of stories from indigenous communities across the world on human rights violations relating to renewable energy. And unfortunately, renewable energy also includes large dams, nuclear, aside from solar and wind. So that is one of the key concerns of indigenous peoples. The other one is also that renewable energy is now in the high agenda for the climate change because of the need for transition from fossil fuels. And we are, of course, fully supporting the transition to do away with fossil fuels. But we need to do it right when we do the transition to renewable energy so that indigenous peoples and local communities are not again sacrificed in a business-as-usual approach to energy development. It's also in the the renewable energy is also high in the Sustainable Development Agenda. It's Goal 7, where it calls for clean and renewable energy for all. So there's a lot of initiatives as well to provide solutions. And indigenous peoples are also having their own initiatives to provide for community-based and community-managed renewable energy for their communities. So these are the issues that will be discussed in our session today. We have 5 speakers. They will be very brief, I hope, and then we will have a short video on the overview on indigenous peoples and energy. And finally, we hope there will be a few minutes for interaction with you. So for the first speaker, of course, we want to acknowledge the presence and the participation here of our Special Rapporteur, the UN Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. I'm sure every one of you knows Vicky TAULI CORPUZ, so I just want to pass on the mic to her now. Is this working?
Yes, thank you very much, Joanne, and thank you all for coming to this side event. Well, first of all, energy is indeed a problem. It's both a problem and a solution for many indigenous peoples all over the world. I just wanted to start by saying that, you know, many of the indigenous leaders and activists, a lot of them have cut their teeth actually in becoming activists by fighting against big hydroelectric dams, you know. And this is our story in the Cordillera region in the Philippines. That's how many of us at a very young age became activists, because suddenly we learned that there was a big dam being built in our territory and nobody of us know about it. And so we had to fight against the dam, and we won the fight. It was funded by the World Bank, but we won the fight, and it was known as the first time that a primitive so-called tribe have won against the World Bank. So that was the story of how many of us got into this issue. In my mandate as the UN Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, I have been receiving a lot of reports about both big mega, energy projects, whether there's a hydroelectric dams or geothermal plants, that are put in indigenous territories, or other huge infrastructures that support the energy project. So this idea of setting up, establishing more small-scale community-based renewable energy systems is something that many indigenous peoples have worked for even before the SDG acknowledged it as a goal or the climate change convention is talking about it. So it's not anything new for many of us simply because many indigenous communities all over the world don't have energy. I grew up in a community where we had to depend on lanterns, to study our lessons. And it was only very recently that we had electricity in my community. So this effort to do work around renewable energy systems is arising from 2 points. One, the need for the recognition of indigenous peoples that they do need energy, but energy that's accessible and not expensive, for them to use. And secondly, that their rights should be respected when renewable energy projects are put into their communities. Because this is what I saw in some of my country visits, as well as in the reports I received. I went to Mexico, for instance. I saw I talked with the people from Oaxaca who were complaining about the windmill project in which they were not adequately consulted. They were telling me about a solar power plant that is going to be built in Yucatan that will deforest hundreds of hectares of their primary forest just to build the power plant, and the solar power plant, and they were not even consulted about it. And thirdly, of course, I was in Honduras. I did an official visit in Honduras, and that's where I met Berta Cáceres, who was killed by the security guard of a hydroelectric company. But the company told me that they were making the dam as the response to addressing climate change. But in the process, because they didn't consult anybody and they were fighting against the people questioning them, they killed Berta Cáceres and several of her colleagues. So this is the situation that I have seen on the negative side, but I also have seen a lot of positive experiences in which indigenous peoples, as part of their assertion of the right to self-determination and their rights to their lands and territories and to development, they managed to develop renewable energy projects. And I think this is the hope that I see with indigenous peoples, and many of my colleagues here will talk about that. So I just wanted to end there to say that there are both downsides and upsides of renewable energy. The major downside is really the lack of consultation, the exclusion of indigenous peoples, and the failure to obtain their consent when such renewable energy projects are put in place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vicky. Now we will now proceed with perspectives and experience from the developed countries. We have Janine YAZZIE from the DINE Nation from Arizona. So Janine, take the floor.
Hi, YAZZIE, Janine YAZZIE, it's an honor to be here in Ohlone territory. It's a beautiful homeland they have here. But to build off what my colleague has already addressed, there's very important issues that need to be taken into consideration as we engage in this conversation about transition to renewable energy. And from the developed nations, one of the things that's most clear being in these so-called powerful progressive countries is that if we do not understand and tackle the root and legacy of resource colonization and the foundation that it has created for corporate capitalist culture, our renewable energy projects are going to continue to carry out the injustices and the violence that we see across our territories around the globe. And we deserve better. Everyone is gravitating to these conversations because we know we are running out of time. We know we have very little options about how to address the impacts of climate change and form pathways of adaptation and mitigation. But we are not yet at the point where we're openly having these conversations about why corporate capitalism cannot survive in that transition and why it shouldn't. being in a developed nation, one of the struggles that we have here as indigenous peoples is that we're dealing with the same state-sanctioned violence, the same collusion between state governments and corporations. We've seen that with Standing Rock. We've seen the human rights abuses and the criminalization of human rights and land rights defenders. But we've also seen how powerful it is in developed nations to completely erase the history and the lived experiences, the ongoing lived experiences of indigenous nations struggling to not only protect what's remaining of our homelands, but to champion these solutions to our energy development. I work with tribes throughout the Southwest who are very much involved in trying to nurture water security and food security, but we're constantly coming into conflict with the corporate claims to our lands and our resources, and this narrative that we have to continue down this pathway of industrial development in order to eventually get to the point where we can afford the type of investment that is necessary to build alternative economies. And that's simply not true. We can take the lessons that we have learned from what has gotten all of us to this point in terms of the legacy and impacts of mining, of extractive resources, and create a new lens to understand it's not just about the type of energy, but it's about the energy production, it's about the energy distribution, and it's about consumption. These are all things that need to be tackled in these conversations about how do we pursue renewable energy that is just, that is fair, that is equitable, and that is really what our future generations deserve. You know, in a lot of these conversations, we talk about renewable economies and sustainability, but a lot of times those terms are masking a value system and a worldview that is merely looking to sustain things as they are today. And that's the corporate profits, that's the interests of the shareholders, to the detriment of public health in our communities. And we don't deserve that anymore. We deserve something better. I come from communities where we're still dealing with the legacy of uranium development, while at the same time fighting against this narrative internationally that nuclear power can be a good transitional energy into a renewable economy when our babies are being born with uranium in their bodies. You know, these are things that we are dealing with that have right now multi-generational impacts, and we no longer can afford to pretend that these conversations that do not tackle the root causes and the legacy of resource colonization and corporate capitalist culture, and to develop the alternatives that we need. We have to dismantle them.
Thank you, Janine, for that broader perspective. Now we move on to Africa. We have Jane MERIWAS from the SAMBURU Women's Trust to also share the perspective of indigenous women and energy.
Good afternoon. My name is Jane MERIWAS. I come from Kenya, an organization called SAMBURU Women's Trust. And it's an honor. It's an honor to be. It's an honor to sit here in front of you. Not really to lecture you, but probably to have a conversation. Where are we as indigenous women? In all this conversation, we are discussing about renewable energy. Do we really play any critical role? Or we are just there not to be involved, to be excluded, when all these energy development, if it is mega dams are being developed in our territory, we are not involved. Why? And majority of us sit here, either we are funders, either we are those companies who are implementing the same issues. At the same time, you also have a mother, you have a sister, and maybe a wife. The only difference is that we indigenous people, we live in remote areas, mostly they're not accessible. Mostly developed country says that we are, we are uneducated, we are semi-literate, but we are very proud to be who we are. And when we discuss about energy, access, how to manage, what to own, the simple question is, when all these developments are being done, the women are brought in the conversation. Who make these decisions? As much as we play a critical role in whatever the discussion taking place, what is the benefit? Is there any benefit that we women at the end of the result that we get? When we look at the renewable energy, yes, we don't say that we don't want development. Development is good, but development can be good when the people who are affected accept and they're involved and they give input and they say, this is what you want to be done. But sometimes it is the opposite. People make decisions in boardrooms far away from that living reality, and they come and implement projects, having the best ideas, but without consulting the native. Yes, electricity is good, but have you ever asked yourself, is my own mother, as old as she is, and she has never gone to school, does she really need that electricity? Because somebody else decided that, yes, my mother wants electricity. Maybe it is true she wanted if she was asked. But unfortunately, even those huge mega infrastructure taking place not just in Africa, but other indigenous people territories, have you ever interrogated how women live in those territories? Maybe if you ask me, I'll be interested to say, I want a healthy facility where a pregnant woman can go and deliver. I'll need a borehole where my mother cannot walk 20 kilometers or 30 kilometers looking for water. Maybe I'll need a school so that other kids can access. But people making decisions can just sit down and imagine that maybe that person got electricity. What do I do in electricity that the home I live, I've lived in century without using any electricity and I've lived peacefully? I think those are the conversations we'll be asked ourselves. And the people who are implementing this project, it's always important to have that meaningful engagement for everybody to participate, to be involved, and to consult so that you want any result. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Now we move on with a community-based initiative on renewable energy. We have Yara from Bolivia to make a presentation. Yara?
Hello. Today I will share with you the pilot experience, a recent experience from this year about renewable energy for the indigenous community at the Yocaya municipality in Bolivia. That it's related with photovoltaic panels connected to Bolivian lithium batteries. So as a result of a field trip to uni this year for our online course with the University of Delaware, I was able to gather a lot of information about the public and private partnerships regarding the industrialization of lithium, as you can see in the pictures. And also, I was able to learn more about the project that provides photovoltaic panels to the municipality of Yocaya. As you can see in this picture, the mayoris hands over the photovoltaic panels to their community. Of course, this was done after a long diagnosis, consultation to the community, and a lot of meetings with them. And as you can see, the panels are connected with Bolivian batteries there. So where is this project located? In Bolivia, in Potosí State, at the Yocaya municipality, that has 10,000 inhabitants with a life expectancy of 62 years. The ethnic group is Puquina. Their main language is Quechua, and Spanish is their secondary language. So what is the energy problem over there? At the Yocaya municipality, more than 755 families have no access to electricity yet, and instead of electricity they use candles or firewood. And this also happens at national level. So what is lithium? Lithium is the key ingredient of the lithium-ion batteries, and it has a lot of applications. And maybe you know that Uyuni Salt Flat in Bolivia holds the greatest lithium deposits. So the Bolivian Lithium Deposits is the state-owned company that is currently in charge of the lithium industrialization in my country. Besides other industrial and pilot plants, they also have the cathodic material pilot plant and the battery assembly pilot plant that are located in this Yokaya municipality. So what has been done so far? This year, as you can see in the pictures, the indigenous authorities are together with the Bolivian lithium deposits engineers, and they have delivered the 30 single-family photovoltaic solar panels to their community. You can see the pictures, the installation, maintenance, and training of the men for this task has been done by the Luces Nuevas, a non-profit organization. And you can see here in this municipality, the mayor is HUMANO. So what do we need? As I told you before, only 30 families have already this system installed in their house, but we need to provide this system to more families. The cost of the system is $400. Half is paid by the government and the non-profit organization, and the other half is paid by the families, by the communities, because when they pay a little portion of this, they consider that it's theirs. So they believe that, okay, I'm going to take care of this system, and I'm not going to sell it, you know. But there is a low income at this community, so it's very hard for them to afford to pay this. So we want to replicate this project at Potosi state level and also at national level, and we need strategic alliances that can allow us to do this. Also, I would like to mention that the energy partnership that that we are going to talk about this today. It's very important because it will improve the exchange of knowledge of this type of different projects, and it will improve a conversation between the indigenous communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Yara. It's not on purpose that we made the only man in the panel to speak last, but he's more presenting on the initiatives, the solutions that indigenous peoples are doing to provide access to energy by communities in an empowering way. So may I call on ADRIAN Bani LASIMBANG, an expert on renewable energy, and just recently appointed as a senator in Malaysia. So, Bani, take the floor.
Thank you, Joan, and I'm very thrilled to be the tone among the lovely roses in this event this afternoon. First of all, I thank the organizers for having this opportunity to share a little bit of what we have done in Malaysia and what we are trying to offer in this partnership with indigenous peoples. Thanks. Basically, we have been playing around with different technologies, but because of our condition in Malaysia, especially in the Malaysian Borneo, there's a lot of rainfall and good forest. So we initiated this project about 18 years ago, mainly to bring the communities on how to bring affordable access to energy. So that was our main goal, and how to get these renewable energy systems to be afforded and be given out, built with the communities. Next. So we run a center called Create Borneo, a Center for Renewable Energy and Appropriate Technologies. We are doing mostly on design training for our indigenous youths to have access to know-how on how to maintain and upkeep these systems that we do. We do mostly micro hydro systems because that's the most, I think, appropriate technology for our region because of the high rainfall and also the topography that we live in. So we also have been developing R&D, all those different technologies so that we can make sure that this technology can be fabricated locally and make it available. Next. Now, these are some of the examples. That's our center that runs on solar PV, and the rest are all training center where we have the youths train and how to assemble those systems. One of the things that we have done is to design our own turbine. Previously, we had to import very expensive technologies from outside, but these are not going to help us in achieving the goal of making sure that energy is affordable, the system is affordable for the communities. Next. So there are three approaches that we, why we home brew our technology. Mainly because as a country where there is middle income country, Malaysia, we are not have access to like most of the development grants. So we have to be innovative in making sure that we can basically have this technology available and also affordable for the communities. So one of it is to do, we did low-cost concrete turbines where we can basically have fiberglass mold, go to the communities and we just pour in the concrete and we have a casing. And we also make most of the turbine runners there from aluminium, recycled aluminium cans. So I think it's very good because we can turn our bad habits to green energy. So all the beer cans, you should not just discard it over. So at least we have some components. But these are the things that we train our local communities on how to produce. And also because there are certain communities have not much good river. So we also look at integrating renewable energy, solar and hydro, so that during the rainy season, we had hydro running, and during the dry season, we have the solar panels charging the batteries. So at least we have more, communities have to access this, and not just for communities who have good hydro resources. Next. So these are some of the lessons learned that we have throughout the years when we have very limited access to funds. We start to use a little bit more innovative financing mechanism by hire purchase or revolving fund. But the most important part is a lot of this project is 80% is social engineering. And I want to make sure that everybody has a clear signal here, because a lot of the time, most of the grants or funding doesn't fund these soft skills. So this is a big problem. So I think with this REP program, this can address this gap to make sure that we can fund the capacity building, the community organizing, and so on. And the last one is also integrating this with watershed conservation. Because if we not have the initiative or the incentive for the communities to own this system, also to protect the forest, these are kind of a strategy to sustain this microhydro system. So next. So this is just an example where we're going to do the solar hydro hybrid system. Next. And works on, we are also working on integrating different systems so that when we are looking at investments, we can make sure that we can also do microgrids by integrating different renewable energy systems into one microgrid that can be owned by indigenous people themselves. That's all. Thank you.
I hope you're inspired by that presentation from the only man in the group. Since we have a few minutes left, we will not have the time for questions, but we will present the video on indigenous peoples and energy.
Okay.
We only have 5 minutes left, unfortunately. But we cannot have a question and answer now. But please feel free to approach our panelists and even some of our indigenous leaders who are around. I would just like then to ask Rainforest Action Network to give a few words. Paddy? Paddy has been a good friend for 20 years. We're together in the anti-dams campaign, so it's good to see him here.
Thank you, Joanne. Yeah, I feel a bit guilty now because I'm taking up the Q&As. I'll be very brief. Yeah, Rainforest Action Network is really delighted to be able to co-sponsor this really important panel tonight. You know, my background, like Joanne and Ricky and Joji here, fighting big hydroelectric dams on indigenous lands and other local community lands around the world, and there's a huge and tragic experience, including in the US, of indigenous people being really decimated by really badly planned and conceived energy projects being imposed upon the territories. And I think it's really important that we make sure that in the clean renewable economy, especially with solar and wind projects, that we don't replicate that, and that indigenous communities have the full power of free, power, informed consent in any energy development in the territories. And as much as possible, we have these types of projects we're hearing about where they're actually under the control of indigenous communities. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, panelists, for all the great work you're doing.
Okay, thank you, Paddy. We still have 5 minutes. So if there is anyone who really wants to speak out here, I'm giving you the time. Anyone who has something to say or a question that you think it needs to be answered before you leave the room. No? Well, any question on the Right Energy Partnership? I hope you're all interested to be part of this partnership. I see Joan raising her hand.
It's already told people about the IPMG, Joan.
Okay. She was just asking about the Indigenous Peoples Major Group. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to provide more information. The Indigenous Peoples Major Group for Sustainable Development is the global mechanism of collaboration and cooperation of indigenous peoples around the world in our engagement with the sustainable development processes from global to the local. And as you see, it says amplifying the voices of indigenous peoples. The reason for this is because we feel like we are still invisible. Our contributions to sustainable development is not recognized and protected. We are facing serious risk in the implementation of the sustainable development, but we are development actors and we are contributing to sustainable development. We have our women, we have our youth, we have our communities, and we need to be part of this global agenda, but making sure that it goes to the realities on the ground, that the global engagement or whatever is happening at the global level should be brought to the indigenous communities, and the contributions of indigenous communities should be also reflected at the global level. So we are organized in a way that we have a global coordinating committee, we have affiliate members, and we have a website. So you can visit our website for more information on the Indigenous Peoples Major Group on Sustainable Development, who is taking this initiative. And as I said, the Right Energy Partnership is an open platform. Anyone who can contribute to the goals and can abide by the set of principles that we are setting, you're all welcome to be part of this journey with indigenous peoples.